Right, so we've looked at several different ways of using the same basic techniques, okay, multiple applications for the same techniques. Now, I'd like to read some quotes by some of the old masters. I'm going to actually start with Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee says, you must be shapeless, formless, like water. When you pour water into a cup, it becomes the cup. When you pour water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. When you pour water into a teapot, it becomes a teapot. Water can drip and it can crash. Become like water, my friend. Okay, now that quote is often used for criticizing traditional martial arts like karate, kung fu, taekwondo, because we put a lot of emphasis on form and structure. Okay, so sometimes some of the more modern martial arts will use Bruce Lee's quote against us. I would like to quote Kenwa Mabuni. He's a founder of Shotokan Karate, and he lived from 1889 to 1952. So he was Bruce Lee would have been 12 years old when Mabuni died. So Mabuni goes back further than Bruce Lee. And Mabuni says, a kata is not fixed or removable. Like water, it's ever-changing and fits itself to the shape and the vessel containing it. However, kata is not some kind of beautiful competitive dance. It's a grand martial arts which determines life and death. So the idea of being like water, being formless, was already there in karate before Bruce Lee came along. Now, don't get me wrong, I've got a huge respect for Bruce Lee, phenomenal martial artist. But some of the ideas that are attributed to him actually go back further, a lot further. Okay? Choki Mabuto, he was one of the most feared fighters in Okinawa. He said, one must learn to apply the principles of the kata and how to bend with the winds of adversity. So again, he's saying that, bend to the winds of adversity. Whatever's coming at you, you've got to adapt to it and change to it. You do not stick strictly to the form. We learn the form to teach us principles of movement, okay? But we do not have to stick rigidly to them. Gishin Funakoshi, practicing kata is one thing, engaging in a real fight is another. Okay, so again, the idea of using form strictly and trying to fight the way we do our basics and the way we do our kata, no, we've got to become formless. We've got to be able to change how we do things. Okay, one of my favorite quotes though is, forgive me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, Hironori Otsuka, who was the founder of Wado Karate. He was a student of Funakoshi's and he lived from 1892 to 1982. And his quote is, it is obvious that these kata must be trained and practiced efficiently, but one must not become stuck in them. One must withdraw from the kata to produce forms with no limits, or else it becomes useless. It is important to alter the form of the trained kata without hesitation to produce countless other forms of training. Okay, now that I think is one of the best quotes of all. Don't be stuck in your kata. Don't be stuck trying to actually defend yourself the way that we move in kata. Kata is teaching us principles of movements, okay? It's teaching us certain, it's teaching you self-awareness. It's teaching you on a number of different levels. But when you actually apply it, don't be stuck in it. Now, he talks about alter the form of the trained kata. And also, And also he says, produce forms with no limits. Okay, forms with no limits. Now, okay, we can go into semantics here. Bruce Lee talked about being formless. He's talking about forms with no limits. Basically, once you've learned the principles of the movements and you understand how to apply them, you become formless in that you do away with the basic form of the movements, but you still apply the principles that practice in that form taught you. Okay, and as you apply those principles, then you can change the shape of your body, you can change the shape of the technique, you can change whatever you like to achieve what you have to achieve. Okay, but don't try to strictly stick to the form of the kata or the form of the basic movements. They are there to teach you principles, not the form or the technique itself. Okay, so be formless, be like water, my friend.